So let's go through this. And I want to say at the outset, I know people watching this came here for the salary cap stuff. Frankly, me and Jeremy were talking before we went on air. I'm looking for updates on Twitter because there are people out there whose jobs it is to know this stuff. I mean, I like to think it's our job too, but who literally get paid vast sums of money to do this stuff, who are offering conflicting things. Are they capped at the second apron? Are they capped at the first apron? I'm still waiting to see, is there another shoe to drop in this, either in this deal? Because if there isn't another shoe to drop in this deal, in terms of more another piece or pieces going out on New York's end, then there is almost certainly going to be another shoe to drop. So let's read the Ian tweet. Then I was about to say, there's almost certainly going to be another shoe to drop elsewhere. And I will say, Ian Begley just tweeted out, Knicks free agent Isaiah Hartenstein is expected to be a top target for several opposing teams in free agency. With the offers that Hartenstein is expected to command on the open market, it's become increasingly unlikely that the Knicks will be able to retain Hartenstein, per SNY sources. So maybe that's the other shoe. I was about to get on here and assume that unless this trade had additional tentacles that we are not yet aware of, it was going to be Mitch getting thrown into a team's cap space or getting traded to a team which would bring back significantly less money. And that would be the way to duck the first apron, because as of now, the way this trade reads, which is that very simply put, we don't have to get into it. We could just say it. Under the current CBA rules, if you send out less salary in a trade, which you bring back, which the Knicks are doing, they are sending out, as the trade has been described thus far, they're trading out less salary than they're bringing back. You are hard capped at the first apron. There is no way that they could bring back OG Anunoby and Isaiah Hartenstein and retain all their other players that they have under contract and stay under the first apron. Jeremy, is all that square? Okay.
Yep.
So if Hartenstein is the other shoe, that makes the trade a little bit. My excitement level goes down a little bit. I'm not going to lie. I love Isaiah Hartenstein. I think he's become instrumental to what the Knicks have become and what they are able to do on both ends of the court, frankly, but especially on the offensive end. And at the same time, because I'm still processing this, right? Because the one thing that everybody has seemingly been consistent about, including Ian Begley, is that this doesn't mean that they're not going to retain OG Anunoby. And I wouldn't think for a second that they would make this trade if they had any doubt that they were going to be able to retain OG Anunoby. I wonder if this signals that they are ready to perhaps do something which I never thought I'd see the day, but maybe they're going to start going in a different direction in terms of play style, in terms of the versatility that they put out on the floor. Because if you're going to give up your entire draft future for Mikal Bridges, who is a guy that you want if you are trying to play the sort of basketball where you're certainly switching everything on defense, and where you are a matchup nightmare for opposing defenses, no matter what they want to throw your way, because you're stacking the floor with shooting, with ball movement, with playmakers, the whole thing. Maybe now all of a sudden you're not going all in on 48 minutes of traditional centers. I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but I'm trying to process this in real time, and this is what I'm coming out with.
I don't buy it.
You think they're going to figure out a way to retain Hartenstein?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm refuting the last point of a change in philosophy, where the Knicks are now changing all of this.
Who they are. Okay.
Yes. The fact about Hartenstein, if he leaves, legitimately terrible. My concern here, let's say it's not Oklahoma City. What if it's a team like Orlando that showed interest, that can basically non-guarantee a player like Jonathan Isaac and be able to just sign Hartenstein for $20 million a year, something like that.
Sure.
They were a threat, but also it seemed, based on where his market was, that it wasn't going to exceed past that point. So I know that I think it's important, though, for us to talk about the cap stuff. And I know you're talking about that a little bit. I just want to highlight some numbers here.
Sure.
So if the Knicks were to keep Julius Randle, have Jalen Brunson, retain OG Anunoby for $35 million.
First year salary. I want to just, for anybody who's like, well, they're not going to get OG for 35 a year. It's not 35 a year. It's a starting salary you're proposing of 35 next year.
Correct. Yep. Mikal Bridges now at $23.3 million. Josh Hart at 18.1, Mitch at 14.3, DiVincenzo at 11.4, McBride at 4.7. I presume the pick that the Knicks gave up, let's just say it's the 25th pick. I mean, the difference in salary between 24 and 25 is negligible. It's $2.8 million. And then Sims at $2 million. If you're looking at all that, the Knicks have, I believe, 2 roster spots that they would need to fill. So those roster charges would count into this. That'd be
1.1
minus about $2.2 million. So the tax space, you're now 5.6 minus, say, 2.2. That's $3.4 million. But the thing is, if you made this trade and nothing else happens, no Jeffries, no Diakite, then the Knicks are hard capped at the first apron, as John, you were getting into. They would be $12.9 million away. Subtract 2.2 from that as well. It's 10.7. So they'd have $10.7 million of breathing room. So the prevailing thought here could be, okay, if you're the Knicks, like
that's without Hartenstein.
This is all without Hartenstein. Do you keep Mitchell Robinson? And if you keep Mitchell Robinson, then are you at least able to essentially find a replacement behind him on the free agent market? Like, is it Goga, who ironically would be from the Magic? Yeah. Is it Ware, who the Knicks worked out in a 2-minute? Like, there are different possibilities here. Of course, it's a little concerning. My thought had been, well, look, if you take Mitch, who is really strong, good at what he does, but injured, and that's a concern, then there's something to be said of it. We also know what the stats with Randall and Mitch are. There's the other factor here, which is perhaps the play style that the Knicks are changing is not changing up at the center position. Perhaps the way that the Knicks are going to operate, or something they should at least consider, is there a world where they trade Julius Randle and get picks back that way? And is their philosophy going to be, because remember the main side of that lineup, you truly do. And I know people might think you're crazy, but honestly, you are losing one of the best shooters in the NBA last season, a high frequency 3-point shooter. You're bringing in Mikal Bridges. You want to resign OG Anunoby. What if you are moving Julius Randle? And what if you're trying to get something back that bounces out your roster? Or this is another thought, and I hadn't really considered it until now. Like, I'm talking it through. Ian says, and I believe him, that the Knicks, it's looking more and more unlikely that they are able to retain Isaiah Hartenstein's services. Okay.
Sure.
That's as of things stand right now, because the Knicks, $16 million, that's about the most they can give him based on early bird rights.
Sure.
The outrageous thing here, right? Because it's all a domino effect. The outrageous play. And again, because I know there are going to be eyeballs here. Not saying this will happen. I'm just talking this out loud, just thinking it through. I want to get your thoughts, of course, John. If you're the Knicks, what if you created cap space? But that's the thing. What if you move Julius Randle?
I think that would be a bridge too far.
I agree. I agree. But all I'm getting at, right? Because it's basically saying, well, who's your backup? How are you getting that backup? Because you don't have the draft equity.
No, I know
what you want to accomplish, and it's a crowded team.
To me, there's no way, because I love the listen. The Hartenstein thing concerns me. It concerns me a good deal. I also know what I just watched in the playoffs, and I know what we've been watching in the playoffs for the last several years. We see the direction the league is going. This is obviously maybe a point that me and you were going to disagree upon. If part of this trade has to do with maybe the Knicks admitting, look, we need to have a changeup in our arsenal. We need to have something other than the fastball, which I'm equating obviously to Tom Thibodeau, 48 minutes, elite rim protection, traditional center play on the defensive end. it like it it makes a lot more sense to me. The thing that I do not think the Knicks are going to do, and for as much as Mikal Bridges allows them to tap into that, I do not think the Knicks are going to make this trade and then give up their second best shot creator. And really, I think for as great as Mikal is, I think there's a gap between Julius as a shot creator and anybody else that's currently on the roster as a shot creator.
Totally.
Right? Yeah. So what are they getting? What would they be getting? I don't even know what they'd be getting back for Julius in your scenario. They would. I mean,
I'm just thinking out loud, right? Because it's the whole point of I get what you're saying, but also I just don't. Tibbs going from 48 minutes of rim protection to Julius at the 5, that does not feel like something they would do.
So here's the thing, though, and this is the thing that we're maybe forgetting. We never really we're really getting off base here. I promise you we're going to get back to the Mikal stuff, but like to me, this is all the same. It's all the same combination. If they're about to pay OG Anunoby some number north of $40 million a year or whereabouts, and you have the ability to defensively put him on the floor in a position where he can, as many have said, he's capable of being a guy who defends 5s. Again, this is not we're playing 48 minutes this way. This isn't even we're playing 28 minutes this way. This is, when push comes to shove when we are trying to get to where we want to be at the end of the year, which is competing for championships, competing for Eastern Conference championships, so on and so forth. If we know that is ultimately our endpoint where we are going to need to put, let's say, OG at the 5, Julius is at the 4, Mikal at the 3, or Josh Hart at the 3, we could go from there. Like, we get what it's going to look like. But just have that in their arsenal. And look, to your point, maybe that ultimate vision doesn't include Julius Randle. I just have a hard time seeing them doing this today, right now, and saying, all right, we're going to make a move in conjunction with this that involves us sending Julius Randle out the door. The one thing I want to say before we get too far is, so I mentioned conflicting things. Maybe others have mentioned this, but Vork tweeted out, I'm pretty sure this hard caps the Knicks at the first apron, which I just talked about. Bobby Marks initially sent out a tweet, which we talked about, which had the Knicks being capped at the second apron. Bobby Marks, who's ESPN's cap guy, obviously he's been a guest on the show, has since sent out another tweet that said for the Knicks to not hard cap themselves at the first apron, Jeffries and Diakite would need to be included in this trade, which makes sense because that's how you avoid taking back more money than you send out. I thought there might be an issue with sending multiple minimum salaries out in a deal. If Bobby says they could do it, then I'm going to trust that they could do it. That would only hard cap them at the second apron, which in theory would not mean that they would have to let Isaiah Hartenstein walk. So again, this is like, I trust Ian Begley above everybody. And if he says his sources say that it is now increasingly unlikely that Isaiah Hartenstein is back, again, that brings me back to what else is going on here. Because if it's not a first apron issue, that is the reason Isaiah Hartenstein is walking. Is there something else that we do not yet know? I don't want to get too far afoul of guessing what maybe this, that, and the other thing. And we got a Woj tweet now, and this is big. I'll just read it. The Knicks are still determined to keep OG Anunoby in free agency, sources tell ESPN, but the ability to, and now, well, if Woj is getting it, but the ability to re-sign Isaiah Hartenstein becomes more difficult now. The Knicks are loading up on wings to match up with the NBA champion Boston Celtics. Look, what Woj says is not gospel, but you know where Woj is getting that from. So that tells me a lot.